Okay, so if you missed our call about Act 2, Scene 3, I'm just going to give you the rundown here and we'll take a look at it together again. So basically, in this scene, Romeo has just left Juliet's balcony and it's taken him a little while, but he finally gets to Friar Lawrence. Now, Friar Lawrence is a new character that we haven't seen before. He's basically a friar, which is a person of religious importance, right? He's like a priest. So he's somebody that Romeo's turned to for moral and spiritual guidance. And he's also somebody that you're going to kind of be able to tell knows a little bit about what's been going on with Romeo and his love sickness for the girl he used to love, Rosaline. And so he runs to Friar Lawrence, not just to tell him about Juliet, but to ask the friar if he'll be willing to marry him and Juliet. And that's the big thing, because Friar Lawrence is ultimately going to agree, but not for the reasons you might expect.
Enter Friar Lawrence with a basket.
The green-eyed morn smiles on the frowning night, checkering the eastern clouds with streaks of light, and flecked darkness like the drunkard reels from fourth day's path and Titan's fiery wheels. None, ere the sun advance his burning eye, the day to cheer, and night's dank dew to dry. I must upfill this osier cage of ours with baleful weeds and precious juiced flowers. The earth, that's nature's mother, is her tomb. What is her burying grave? That is her womb. And from her womb children of divers kinds we sucking on her natural bosom find. Many for many, virtues excellent, none but for some, and yet all different. Oh, mickle is the powerful grace that lies in plants, herbs, stones, and their true qualities. For naught so vile that on the earth doth live, but to the earth some special good doth give. Nor aught so good, but strained from that fair use, revolts from true birth, stumbling on abuse. Virtue itself turns vice, being misapplied, and vice sometimes by action dignified.
Okay, so again, we see Friar Lawrence with this long soliloquy. He's talking to himself. And basically, if you look at what is going on, he talks about the gray eyed morn smiles with the frowning night, checkering the eastern clouds with streaks of light. So at this point, it's sunrise. Romeo's been out all night, and Friar Lawrence is up super early. So he's up nice and early, and he is filling up, fill up, right? It's a backwards word. This osier cage of ours with baleful weeds and precious juiced flowers. So he's filling it up with weeds, with flowers, and he's thinking about the nature of these plants that he's picking, because basically what he realizes is there's a kind of a paradox that the earth, that's nature's mother, is her tomb. What is her burying grave? That's her womb. So this line's kind of telling us that if you think about it, it's kind of crazy that when things die, we bury them in the earth. But that's also where life comes from. So the ground is both simultaneously a burial ground and a place of birth. And so he's looking at these flowers and he realizes that they're all kind of different in that they both have um, different natures to them. He says, for not so vile that on the earth doth live, but to the earth some special good doth give. So some of them give great good to the earth, but then some of them also give some badness, right? Where they revolt from true birth, stumbling on abuse. Meaning if you abuse the power there, it could be bad. And then he has this line that's super famous. Virtue itself turns vice being misapplied, and vice sometime by action dignified. So what that means basically is that you can do a good thing and it can turn out bad, right? You can have good intentions, plan to do something for the right reasons, and ultimately it causes harm. Or you can do something that most people think is bad, but if you do it for the right reason, it might not necessarily be that bad.
Within the infant rind of this small flower, poison hath residence, and medicine power. For this, being smelt with that part, cheers each part. Being tasted, slays all senses with the heart. Two such opposing kings encamp them still, in man as well as herbs, grace and rude will. And where the worser is predominant, full soon the canker death eats up that plant.
Enter Romeo.
Okay, so this line, again, we see he's talking about the same flower, and he says, he's looking at it, and he says, within the infant rind of this weak flower, poison hath residence and medicine power. So basically, this flower has both the ability to harm you or to heal you. And he says, when you smell it, it makes you feel better, but when you taste it, it stays all senses with the heart, meaning it'll kill you. And then he realizes that two such opposed kings encamp them still, in man as well as herbs, grace and rude will. So basically, this flower is just like any person, right? A person can have the power to do good, just like he has the power to do evil.
Good morrow, father.
Benedicite, what early tongue so sweet saluteth me? Young son, it argues a distempered head so soon to bid good morrow to thy bed. Care keeps his watch in every old man's eye, and where care lodges, sleep will never lie. But where unbruised youth with unstuffed brain doth couch his limbs, there golden sleep doth reign. Therefore thy earthiness doth me assure thou art uproused with some distemperature. Or, if not so, then here I hit it right. Our Romeo hath not been to bed tonight.
That last is true. The sweeter rest was mine.
God pardon sin. Wast thou with Rosalind?
With Rosaline, my ghostly father? No, I have forgot that name and that name's woe.
That's my good son. But where hast thou been, then?
Okay, so even Friar Lawrence thinks that Romeo is still in love with Rosaline right now. And he realizes that Romeo hasn't been asleep all night and thinks that automatically it was because of Rosaline. But Romeo is about to tell him what actually was the cause of him being up.
I'll tell thee ere thou askest me again. I have been feasting with mine enemy, where on a sudden one hath wounded me that by me wounded. Both our remedies within thy help and holy physic lies. I bear no hatred, blessed man, for, lo, my intercession likewise steads my foe.
Be plain, good son, and homily in thy drift. Riddling confession finds but riddling shrift.
Then plainly know my heart's dear love is set on the fair daughter of rich Capulet. As mine on hers, so hers is set on mine, and all combined, save what thou must combine by holy marriage. When and where and how we met, we wooed and made exchange of vow, I'll tell thee as we pass. But this I pray, that thou consent to marry us today.
Okay, so here we see Romeo explains the whole situation, right? He says, I'll tell you all the details later, but I hope that you will agree to marry us today. So not just are they going to get married and agree to be married, but it's going to be pretty much immediately.
Holy Saint Francis, what a change is here! Is Rosalind that thou didst love so dear, so soon forsaken? Young men's love, then, lies not truly in their hearts, but in their eyes. Jesu Maria, what a deal of brine hath washed thy sallow cheeks for Rosaline! How much salt water thrown away in waste, to season love that doth not taste! The sun not yet thy sighs from heaven clears, the old groans ring yet in mine ancient ears. Lo, here upon thy cheek the stain doth sit of an old tear that is not washed off yet. If e'er thou wast thyself, and these woes thine, thou and these woes were all for Rosaline.
Okay, so again, he's saying, this is just a crazy change, right? And he says, young men's love lies truly not in their hearts, but in their eyes, meaning that Rosaline was like everything that Romeo would talk about, everything he dreamed about, and now it's not really clear that he ever loved Rosaline. And he says that love lies not in their hearts, but in their eyes, meaning he saw the next pretty thing, and then bam, just like that, he changes his mind. And it's ridiculous to Friar Lawrence because he can still see the salt water on his cheeks. He can still hear his sighs and remember how much he was talking about loving Rosaline over and over and over and over again. And now all of that's out the window.
And art thou changed? Pronounce these sentences then. Women may fall where there's no strength in men.
Thou chidst me oft for loving Rosaline,
For doting, not for loving, pupil mine.
and bad'st me bury love.
Not in a grave to lay one in, another out to have.
I pray thee chide not. She whom I love now doth grace for grace and love for love allow. The other did not so.
So Romeo is saying, look, don't yell at me. At least this one loves me back. The other one didn't do that.
Oh, she knew well. Thy love did read by rote that could not spell. But come, young waverer, come go with me. In one respect, I thy assistant be. For this alliance may so happy prove to turn our household's rancor to pure love.
Oh, let us hence. I stand on sudden haste.
Wisely and slow. They stumble that run fast.
Exit.
Okay, so we see here that Friar Lawrence is going to agree to marry Romeo and Juliet, but it's not because he believes that they're actually in love. He says that he's going to help him because this alliance may so happy prove to turn your household's rancor to pure love, meaning he thinks that if he marries Romeo and Juliet, their marriage is going to have to force the families to forgive each other and stop the feud. And that's ultimately why he agrees to do it. And that's where the scene ends.